Danger Street, issue 9, Tom King and Jorge Fornes. And of course, last issue, it felt like we were building up to this Clash of the Titans. It was building up to Manhunter versus Codename Assassin. And did I even speculate that the entire issue might be just their fight? Did I say that? I don't know if I did, but
I don't think so. But if you did, I don't think you thought it was going to be a philosophical
no
conundrum that is super dense and takes a while to read.
I mean, if I didn't say it, I wasn't surprised. Like, once there was a few pages in, I was like, oh wait, this is going to be the whole issue. This is going to be just them debating as they fight.
I definitely spoiled myself to see how long the fight was going to go, and saw the end of the fight before. However, I was still shocked by the turn of events because of what they're saying and what actually goes down in this fight. I
think first things first, though, we have to point out this is the only issue of this book that is not started from the Helmet of Fate talking to the reader. That's just not here, you know?
Despite being called Dr. Fate in Chapter 9, Dr. Fate.
Which is funny, because it's the only issue where he's not, referenced or in at all in any way, but... so basically they're fighting on a rooftop, as the cover would imply. It's a gorgeous cover as well.
Oh my god,
And they basically... It's basically them debating who's got the advantage, what the rules of the fight are, and kind of... So Codename Assassin is basically saying, I've got an advantage here, and Manhunter's like, how so? Explain. And he's like, well, your goal is to kill the Commodore. The Commodore, right? For the green team. And... that means you have to win, right? So because there's 3 outcomes to the fight. Either I die, you die, or we both die. So the only way you can achieve your goal is if you live, which is only one of the 3 outcomes. But my goal is just to kill you. So even if I die too, I've still won.
The odds are in my favor.
Right.
And all I have to do is beat you. You have to do so much more. So that's where they start getting onto that philosophical... as they are fighting, which is a cool type thing. I was getting kind of Highlander vibes.
They start fighting, and they're kind of just going back and forth, where he's like, yeah, but if you have this advantage, then technically, I can't even remember how it went back and forth the entire time.
So they're talking about, too, he's like, well, if you have the statistical advantage, then by me, defying the odds, that means that a tie cannot... You, by winning... by a tie doesn't necessarily mean you win, because you already have an advantage, and that's kind of like cheating. And their code name is like, well, there's no cheating in our line of work.
Yeah, well, it gets to that, but it also gets to the idea that, well, if you have an advantage and you're part of the reason why you want to win is because of pride, because you have to know you can win, can you really accept that pride if you come into this with a 2-to-1 advantage of how to succeed? And so but it goes back and forth like this. Like, this is a very dialogue heavy issue, because it is them debating back and forth about the rules of the fight and what constitutes a victory and what would satisfy either one of them as a victory. And that's so much. And so we get about a third in, and Assassin gets knocked down, and it's like, okay, how about we have a parlay, and we take a rest, because obviously we're pretty evenly matched. That's this
is gonna go on all day. Let's take a break. Let's regroup. Chug some water. Enjoy the sunset.
Because at one point, Codename Assassin basically says, because one of the arguments that Manhunter has is that, well, if you die in a tie, you're trying to tell me that's an equal win for you, but it's not really, because all that money he's paying you to kill me, you won't be able to actually use, so you're not really getting the success. And Assassin's rebuttal to that is that, yes, but money can, inheritance, it can go to people that I care about, it can go to a family, my name and money can live on. And Assassin's like, in our line of work, we don't have families, that's bullshit. And he's like, nah, you're right, we don't. So it's this back and forth. So it's kind of like a witty back and forth, but it's like they're both speaking very proper, and they're both trying to outsmart each other. I'm not gonna lie,
it was a tough read for me, right? But what got me through is knowing that if Connor was reading this, how much he would hate it. So I was like, because as soon as I was finished, I was like, man, this was dense.
It was it's definitely dense, right? But I think it's a really fulfilling issue, because even if you don't take in every little thing they're saying to each other, the back and forth like gets to the point where I almost started laughing at some of the outcomes to some of these things, where like when they have this parlay like halfway through, and like they go and sit at the edge of the roof, and they start just talking about who they are and how they get into this. You know, Manhunter's talking about the first time he killed someone and how all that training's led to this. Assassin's talking about his first kill. And I really liked actually that they're sort of taking swigs of this whiskey, and it's when he passes the flask that it becomes Assassin's turn to tell his story, and he does, and it's all this very pleasant thing, and Assassin, you know, he still thinks he has the advantage. They still have to do this, but he claims he's not a narcissist. It's not about ego, and Manhunter's like, you know what? We only care about the outcome. We could fight for ages. Let's just toss a coin. And whoever loses has to jump off the roof. Let's just do that.
And I love that Codename Assassin's... No, I have the advantage. I'm not giving it to a coin flip.
Yeah,
We're not doing this.
Yes, I have a 2 and 3 advantage right now, and what you're proposing is 50-50. So that is actually worse odds for me. And...
We're almost at Steiner math, bud.
And this is where Assassin shows off his telekinesis powers, and he starts like floating the coin, and then he floats Assassin, and he holds Assassin out over the edge of the building. Sorry?
You keep transposing
flipping. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Assassin's holding Manhunter with his mind over the end of the building, and basically says that once he closes his fist, he will drop to his death. And even whilst he's floating out there, like Manhunter's still speaking and sort of debating, like, is this really a success for you? Does this prove anything? Is this a victory? You know,
he's like, I knew you had telekinesis, and I was wondering when you were going to get to use it. So you were having an advantage. Of course, you're going to beat me. Yeah,
but
Assassin's like,
I'm counting on your hubris and not being satisfied that you're going to win that way, that's going to stop you. And then he closes his fist, and we get this great page where he's fallen to his death, and the Assassin like starts talking to the Commodore in his headset, and he's like, yeah, you know, update. And the Commodore's just complaining about being hungry and wanting to go get fries with different sauces, and Assassin picks up the coin and decides just before Manhunter hits the ground that he's not happy with this. So he holds him in place and he tosses the coin that was left up there. And basically this is decided that he's going to bring Manhunter back up to actually finish the fight properly. So he does. He brings him back up. And Manhunter never acts scared. He never acts like he was worried that he was about to die. He's just like, no, I knew you'd want to finish the fight. So now we continue.
Well, I like before he drops him too, Codename Assassin is like, we were evenly matched. A tie is a win for me. You're at a disadvantage, yet you knew I'd cheat. And in relying on the cheat, I'd lose. You're very clever. I like you. Right? So he's just like, okay.
It's 4D chess. It's 4D chess, and I love it.
Yeah, well, I like, too, that he's kind of like, I like the cut of your jib. I owe you, you know, if we're going to kill each other, I owe you a good death, not dropping you, you know. Well, that's kind of what makes it click that he can't just let him fall, right?
Yeah.
And then the Commodore, you know, whining about fry sauces kind of sets him over. He's like, what am I doing with my life? You know, I deserve a good death, too.
Yeah, and basically, I think they both realize this is the first time they've ever met a mutual who has a similar experience to themselves. They've never met someone who's grown up being an assassin like they have.
Right.
So there's this kind of weird respect that's happening as the fight continues. But of course, just before it's about to start again, Manhunter throws his sword at Assassin and impales him, and he's like, well, did I just break the rules? Because technically we didn't say the parlay was over, but we never we had like an assumption of rules. We didn't really settle on a contract.
We never shook on it, right? Like, and now he's kind of becoming the dirtbag, but you know,
now he's kind of cheating.
Like, well, no, well, and cheating was always going to be a part of it, right? So, is it cheating if you're expecting to cheat? If both sides can cheat, is it cheating?
And now we're at 5D chess. We're going to be at 6D chess in a minute. And
just the fact when he throws it like that, all I could think of was Charlie yelling "wild card," right? Like.
And so Manhunter walks over to Assassin, who's crawling towards his sword that he's dropped because he's been stabbed. And Manhunter picks it up. He holds it above his head, and just as he's bringing it down, Assassin pulls the sword that's in his stomach out and cuts off Manhunter's leg. And this is the point when they're both lying there in pools of their own blood, where I went, this is like an absurdly gory version of that fight from They Live with Roddy Piper and Keith David. That's what this is. And it's at this point where I started finding it funny. And I don't think it's unintentional. I think at a certain point you're meant to see like
how absurd all this violence is, right?
It's like a really intentional contrast between how smart they're trying to sound while they're talking to each other, and just how downright absurd the violence is, and how they're still trying to fight when one of them's been stabbed in the stomach and the other one's hobbling on one leg. You know?
Well, they're both known as the Knights, right? That's what the Helm of Fate calls them.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So this also goes into that where like the idea of a knight is this warrior, right, that goes out and fights for the person or for the side, the realm they represent. But in that war, they're gonna do unhonorable things or dishonorable things, you know. And so this kind of just doubles down on that, which I didn't think of until just right now.
Yeah, and Manhunter throws himself Assassin, and they both basically stab each other again here. And they're lying on the ground, and like sort of there's like a vignette effect where it's the light's shrinking. And basically what's happened here is they both die. They're like it's a little bit ambiguous, but they're effectively both in the afterlife. And the debate keeps going where Assassin's like, well, I won because it was a tie, we both died, and therefore you didn't kill the Commodore, so I succeed. And this is where we're at 7D chess, because now Manhunter's like, aha, but I knew this was a possibility. I let you think you had the advantage that if it was a tie, that you automatically win. But I have made allies. I have joined a team since the last couple issues, and they are going to finish the job. Now your liege, or whatever you want to call the Commodore, he is now unprotected, and they're going to kill him. And I started laughing at this point because I'm like, ha ha ha, we're both dead, and you thought a tie would be your victory, but no, I won because I already thought of this.
Yeah, turns out what you thought was my goal actually wasn't my goal at all. My goal was to kill you, so therefore I win. But right, like.
Yeah, but what's wild about it is that this kind of sort of leads to this like sense of respect where he's like, I'm sorry about your leg. And he's like, my failure to protect my limb is not your problem.
Yes. Would you like your sword back? Also, Manhunter using the sword kind of as a crutch. There's that where he says everything hurts. I also, to bring this to a little bit of wrestling, it made me think of Jon Moxley, right? Like he's just covered in blood, and he's holding himself up on a weapon, right, to keep this, not facade, but just to keep that image of this, kind of barbaric way of life, and it was very, very funny.
Yeah, and I think the inclusion of the coin and the idea that maybe we'll just end this with a coin toss is the idea that these two people they're fighting on the sides they're on because of fate, but they could easily just be switched around, and like he could be protecting the Commodore, Assassin could be the one coming after him. Like it's just like fate. It's the toss of the coin is what's put them on the paths to some extent that they're on. I think that's partially why that's such a heavy theme in this issue. But yeah. it's funny because it's like, even right at the very end, like Assassin's still trying to say that he's kind of like won ultimately because he's figured out Manhunter's whole shtick. But yeah, so I don't know, it's good. They're still questioning what winning means in the context of this, right to the very last panel, and then the final line is heads or tails because he's going to toss the coin again to see who won. And basically, it's the perfect if you want to give us a fight where no one ever truly wins because there was never because they're equal matches. Like this issue did that perfectly. It was funny. It was thrilling at points, but it was definitely funny and very thematically kind of interesting to read. And they did a good job of building to this, so it felt like an ultimate big showdown. So I will agree it's a little dense and wordy in places, and there's so many speech bubbles that my eyes did sort of gloss over a couple times whilst trying to read it, but overall I would say it's a really strong issue.
And Fornes' art too, he has to work with so many boxes, right?
Oh yeah.
And what I like best about Fornes is the way that he's able to put a lot of detail into a small area, right? So like in the Rorschach book, right, we would have these, big pages that we could hyper focus on certain things in those. And here he kind of does the same thing, because it never doesn't feel like an action scene, even though it's not like super dynamic layouts. It's still, grid patterns. And if I'm looking at it, there's not a lot of variance here.
No, every page is an 8-panel grid. It's that idea that they're evenly matched, so every single page is symmetrical as far as the panels are concerned. And not only is it an 8-panel grid in every single page, pretty much, well, maybe not when they're fighting per se, but every single time they're having a conversation, it's literally all the Manhunter panels are on the left and all the assassin panels are on the right, like throughout the entire book.
Yeah. So it's very well made. I didn't think about that until now, too, because I got so caught up in what was being said versus how it looked. And that was pretty genius on their part, on their creative's part.
Yeah, yeah. Even when Manhunter's fallen to his death, they still devote all the panels on that side to showing you him falling, whilst Assassin's on the other side talking to Commodore. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only real complaint I have is that I did miss some of the other characters by obviously not having them in this issue, but this was the right choice to focus on this to such an extent. It made it feel like a special issue. And I love that, you see it in movies sometimes where like, the two people who are about to fight like sit down for a quiet conversation first, and there's this like shared respect. I'm thinking like some of the John Wick movies kind of have this. I was getting kind of vibes of that.
Or even in Heat, right, with Pacino and De Niro sitting at the diner.
Yeah, there's like a sense of respect because they can see how like sort of wise and skilled the other person are, and that it's a formidable foe to go up and do battle against. I dug all that a lot. So it really made me care about these two characters who I don't really like. I remember Codename Assassin from some of the Superman stuff. He was a backup character. I mean, that basically goes for every character in this book though, right?
No, I know, but like I don't know, because like Metamorpho, right? He was a character early on.
Sure. You can say like Metamorpho and maybe like
Starman,
Orion, but come on now, the Dingbats, Lady Cop, like you didn't care about any of these characters.
But up until that, I didn't know those characters existed, right? Codename Assassin and Manhunter both are both characters that I am aware of, but had no thoughts on. Right, my Manhunter is not this Manhunter. It's not Mark Spector. It's the lady one, the lawyer, right?
Yeah.
That's the Manhunter that I came in reading. That's who I associate with the name. So the fact like we got the story of these two warriors, having this philosophical debate as they are trying to kill one another, and it made me care about both of them, and kind of sad that if that's it, right? They both died, and now they're in this purgatory because of all the bad things they've done, but they're there together. It makes me kind of sad that that's the way that they go out.
Yeah, obviously we didn't talk about literally every little thing they said, but there was a little bit of the conversation in the middle about where they're heading to when they die. Yeah. That was sort of brought up in the middle. So, it's a special issue that I think feels unique, and I love that King and Fornes chose to do it this way. Because even if it isn't perfect from like a reading from page to page kind of thing, I can appreciate the artistry in it, and I think it'll read better as well on a repeat read. I think when you read this a second time, it'll just flow really well.
Dense, and I'm trying to read and take in everything they're saying, and it's a lot. And at points, it was reminding me of the end of Matrix Reloaded with the Architect and Ergo vis-a-vis. I mean, it wasn't nearly that bad in a name, but man, there's so much in there.
Well, no, because the conversation here was good for a start.
Well, that's what I mean. But that's the only thing that I can compare it to that first came to mind. But when I said it was dense, like for Connor to jump in there and go, oh, like a Tom King comic, it necessarily was. I wasn't saying it was bad. It was just I felt like I went through an experience reading it, and if that was what Fornes and King wanted, then mission accomplished.
Yeah, they wanted this fight to feel like an experience from start to finish.
And that's how I feel, right? I felt like drained kind of towards the end of it. And like, again, I came into this thinking like, I don't know if I like this one. Maybe this is the first one. I'm not going to give, the full marks, but thinking about like stuff I didn't even pick up on, like the panel breakdowns, right? And how they're evenly spaced out, and the way that they are, it's all 8 panels across the way. In my head, some of them are bigger, but they're not.
This is Thanos' favorite issue.
Yeah,
it's perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
As all things should be. And what did it cost them? Everything. Yeah. So, you know.
Oh dear. No. You know, these King Prestige books continue to be some of the highlights of the past few years.
Yeah.
And obviously we got Penguin now. We got his Wonder Woman run coming. We'll see how that does. But Danger Street has been exceptional, and it's been very different from his other books as well, which has been really nice. So, Matt, what are you giving Danger Street issue 9?
I think I'm gonna give this a 9. A 9 for the 9.
Yeah, no, I'm giving it a 9 too. Like, I love the idea of doing a bottle issue where it's just the one fight taking the whole time. I think that's, like, if you've built up to it the way this has, I think that's the perfect choice. It is a little dense, it is a little wordy in places, but I think, like, the absurdity of it and how much they were talking to each other became really funny the more I read it. And it fit into it.
When you made the They Live reference, it clicked. I didn't think of that initially.
Yeah.
But it is just so, it goes so far beyond what we would expect that it starts to be funny.
Yeah, it's that, but it's arguably more verbal than it is fist fighting. Because they kind of stop, but the fight continues in words, and then they keep going.